All right. Hello, everybody. Again, I'll introduce myself, Jose Valleceros. I am here with the McNair Scholars Program that we have over at UC Davis. Again, I want to tell you a little bit about McNair, but even before we get there, you'll notice that the title of my talk is Pathway for Pursuing a PhD, the McNair Scholars Program. But I think the first thing always comes to mind, right? Because we're going to be working predominantly with first-generation low-income students as well as students that are underrepresented in graduate school. First thing you get a lot, first question, what is a PhD, right? I'm a first-generation college student. I went and got a PhD, but when I went to Fuera University, I had no idea what a PhD was. I kind of give my story and say that I essentially fell into a program that essentially set me up to get a PhD, and I wouldn't have a PhD if it wasn't for that program. So I think I got to step back a little bit and tell you what is a PhD. It's a doctorate of philosophy, right? That's what PhD is going to stand for. It's a degree that shows you're an expert in a specific content area. What this means is that you get a PhD. When I got a PhD and I was studying for a PhD, my family thought that I would know everything in the world when I got a PhD. And I was like, no. It's like this specific area that I know, and I know it in this depth is really what it is. But again, the knowledge is going to be in that specific area. It's an advanced postgraduate degree involving research. And very important here, on an original topic. When you get a PhD, you're putting forward a contribution to the world of research. That means that you're contributing something that is original, wasn't known before, and you're going to study it, and then you're going to write it up as your dissertation, which is going to be that final, you can think about big report that you're going to put forward to complete a PhD. It's not a professional degree. Professional degrees are going to be like a JD, which is going to be a lawyer, an MD, a medical degree. Those are professional degrees. A PhD is not going to be a professional degree. And I'll talk about the McNair Scholars Program in a bit. And again, you'll see that we are preparing students to go to graduate school to get a PhD, not a professional degree. So there's a small distinction I want to make there. Then it's why pursue a PhD, right? Now you know a little bit about what it is. Why pursue a PhD? You know, a lot of people are going to think about, a PhD is going to prepare you for an academic position. What I want you to know is that, yes, it does. And a lot of people that get a PhD will go into academic positions. But now what we see more is that about 40% of the people with PhDs are going to go to an academic position. That means that now more than ever, you have a lot of people with PhDs that are going into non-academic positions. So I want to make you point out this second point here. It makes you a stronger job candidate, right? You're going to see different job descriptions. I always tell people, go and take a look at the job description for the job you eventually want to have. And take a look, and you're going to notice it's going to tell you this is going to be the required degree, and it's going to tell you this is going to be the preferred degree. I bet you that most of the time when they hire somebody, they're going to get somebody off that preferred degree list. Even though it's preferred, take it almost as a requirement, because that's what you're seeing more nowadays, is that it is going to make you a stronger job candidate if you do have what we call that terminal degree, the highest degree available in your area. Develops your critical thinking skills, something that Lolito mentioned earlier. Once you're able to take the knowledge that you learn in your classroom, you're able to put it into the world of research. I say it makes the book come alive, because you're actually able to see what is happening there. You're able to describe what's happening there. And you're also able to take it a step further than you are in your lab class. Some of you may have chemistry lab, biology lab. It's a very prescribed lab. In the world of research, you're going and looking at questions that there is no answer to. People don't know the answer. Researchers don't know the answer, which is why, again, it's an original contribution. Lastly, if you need another reason, education pays, right? You'll see the higher degree that you get, the lower percentage of unemployment. On the other side, the more education you get, the higher the pay. And that really means, as I mentioned earlier, looking at those job descriptions, what you'll see is typically if you want to go into those higher positions, it is going to require that higher degree. And with that higher degree, also is going to go that higher pay. And so again, that's also, if you need another incentive, there is another one that we have there. Is a PhD for me, right? Again, now you know a little bit about the PhD. The PhD for me. Let me point this out and jump to this last point here. You know, it's not always a linear path. That's something that I tell students. It's not always a linear path. You can see that there is a person here. They can go across all these different paths to get to eventually being a doctor, getting a PhD. That means that typically you'll have some people that go directly from an undergrad directly to a PhD program. You have some students that will go get a bachelor's, they'll go get a master's and then to a PhD program. You have some people that will get a bachelor's, they'll go and work and then return to a PhD program. Again, that allows the development of different skill sets that are going to allow them to be successful and get a PhD. So understand that it's not always a linear path. What I wanted you is to look at this question. Do you enjoy researching about the unknown? Again, as I mentioned earlier, getting a PhD is going to allow you to give an original contribution. If you're one of those people that has always asked, why things are the way they are, a lot of the STEM majors that's what led them to be a STEM major. They ask, why is something happening? Why is something occurring? If you're that kind of person, the PhD may be for you. You have that curiosity, a natural curiosity, which is going to be needed to be successful in a PhD program. Ask your professors about their experience, right? You have professors around. If you have professors that have a PhD or have a master's degree, ask them what their grad school experience was like. How was their experience? Did they enjoy it? What did they study? They're going to be experts in the area there. Ask them what that was like. And lastly, consider your goals after you earn a PhD. What do you want to do after you get a PhD? That's a question that you want to pose, because as we prepare students as part of the McNair Scholars Program, we want them to understand, what are you doing next? Because you actually have to start developing the skill set that it's going to take for that next step while you're still in grad school. If you're in undergrad right now, you have to develop those skill sets that you want to do in a job after you finish, because you have to working on those now to make you competitive when it comes time to getting that job. So I say prepare for a PhD now. I used to be the MESA director over at Solano Community College. And a lot of students thought, I'm at a community college. There's not a whole lot that I can do right now. There's no research experiences that are on my campus. And I say, you have to look. And you could, if not, you could develop them with your faculty is what you can do. But number one, I want to point out, and you're going to see it's going to come up again in my presentation, do well academically. Do well academically, because that's going to keep you competitive for the positions that I'll talk about in a bit. Also, it's going to keep you competitive for graduate school. And you'll see that when it comes to transfer as well as when it comes to graduate school, I always say the easiest cutoff, the first essentially filter that they have to looking at whether a student gets it or not is GPA. When they get 100 applications, the easiest way to cut down 100 applications to 25 applications is by looking at GPA. And so I say do well academically so you can get yourself to that point of having your application thoroughly looked at. And that's when those other things you've done are going to stand out. But do well academically, again, that's going to be step number one. Get involved in research. Again, you can. This is going to expand your intellectual curiosity. Start asking those questions. And how can you do it right now at a community college? Look at and start asking questions and talk to your faculty. How can you start a small project at your college? I'll give you an example of a project that some students did over at Solano Community College where I was at. There was a student that wanted to go to vet school. So she actually worked with the SPCA. And she was able to get samples of urine from cats that were feral cats that live outside, and she compared the urine of feral cats to in-house cats. And so we were able to put a small project together just by using a couple of test strips, actually, that we got from the physiology lab. Again, we don't have all this technology that's over at UC Davis, but whenever you put a question together, and one thing you learn when you get a PhD is you have to learn how to ask a question, and you have to know what your limitations are. And that's where you could put a small study together with what you have. That student actually went and presented at the SACNAS conference that Lolita mentioned earlier, and she was a community college student. And that's something you see more and more nowadays, that you have students at community college that are going and presenting at these professional conferences. So again, don't think just because you're at community college you can't do a small research project. That is something that you can definitely do. And summer research opportunities. Have any of you heard about research experience for undergraduate opportunities? They'll call them REUs. Okay, heard about them? These are opportunities that are out there for students that are undergrads that allows them to go visit a university and do summer research is what it allows them to do. More now, these programs are actually looking for community college students. And that's because there's a huge number of students that are coming from the community college going to the four-year schools. So they're actually looking for those community college students to go and be a part of those programs. So I point you to this website, which is the Pathways to Science website. Go to this website, and this website has a lot of different programs that are out there. And it'll actually allow you to filter. It's getting a little bit late for some of these deadlines for these REUs, but the great thing about this website, it actually allows you to filter through and put down what are the different due dates. And you can go and you can look for and see if there's still some that are still open currently. But if they're closed and you see one that you want to look, you would be interested in, keep it in mind for next year is what I would encourage you to do. Okay. Again, I'm going to talk about the McNair Scholars Program. You'll hear a little bit, and I'll mention a little bit the UC Leads program, and Lalila just mentioned the CAMP program. These are all programs, again, that are there at UC Davis. I call them kind of sister programs together because the goal of these three programs is to get students to go and pursue PhD degrees. Again, the requirements may be slightly different, the activities may be slightly different, but the goal is exactly the same. I was part of these programs, Maximizing Access to Research Careers, MARC, and Research Initiative for Scientific Enhancement, RISE, over at San Francisco State University. And again, in structure, they were very similar to these three programs I just mentioned here. So even though you may go to university, it may not have a camp, it may not have Leeds, may not have McNair, start looking for those other programs that may be similar, have the same aim, but may be different in name, is what you want to look out for. Okay? Then there's Bridge to the Doctorate that Lolita just mentioned. Again, a lot of other programs that are out there that are available. So take a look and look for those programs. Now let me shift over a little bit and tell you a little bit about the McNair Scholars Program. Again, that's the program that I work with. I'm the director of the McNair Scholars Program. It's a program that is named after Donald Ronald E. McNair. Dr. McNair unfortunately perished in the Challenger accident in 1986, but he was such an accomplished physicist, scientist, that they named the program for him essentially right after his death in 1986. So that's when the program was actually chartered, meaning that the Department of Education put forward and said, we want to get a program that is going to allow students to develop themselves, students that are underrepresented, students from low income and first generation backgrounds, to go and pursue PhD degrees. It is a TRIO program. So if have ever been part of any TRIO program, this is a TRIO program as well. And there is a big emphasis on connecting the pathway for the TRIO program. So I don't know if any of you are part of Upward Bound or part of Student Support Services. Those are awesome. If you are part of those programs, definitely let us know. Come on over, because I actually met a person about a week ago who actually was part of Upward Bound. She went to SSS. She continued to the McNair Scholars Program and now has a PhD and is working over at the University of Illinois. And so again, you see that these are pathways that definitely work. So if you're part of those programs, let us know. Come on over, and we'll definitely try to assist you. Again, the aim is to increase diversity of graduate education. That is the ultimate goal. And I'll give you a quick example why that is. If you look at the numbers, and I'll give you the numbers for Latinos over at UC Davis, it's increasing. The Latino numbers are increasing, but they're about 22% currently. If you look at graduate numbers, about 10% for Latino students. Faculty gets about 4% at that point. And so again, you see that at every step you have a drop essentially in that representation, and it's not reflecting the students that are there. But again, to get the faculty numbers to increase, you have to get the graduate numbers to increase. So again, you see it's a step that has to be there. Real quickly, the UC Davis program was started in 1995-96, so we're going into our 20 plus years now that we have been there on campus. Let me give you a quick outline. I'll just go real quickly through this. I won't spend too much time on it, but we have students, they come in during the fall. So students will come in during the fall of their junior year. So if you're a transfer student, I'll tell you in a bit, I'll tell you a little, our deadline is going to be June 30th, but that's because we want to bring in students in the fall, bring them in the fall quarter. We welcome the new scholars, is what we do there right before the fall quarter begins. And again, I want to stress, and you're going to see this a lot in my presentation, we want the students to do well academically. Again, because these students are coming in as potential graduate students, again, we want to make sure that they're doing well academically so that they can be competitive when it comes to applying for graduate school. Transfer students, very big emphasis here. We want them to have a good transition to UC Davis. Extremely important, right? Because for a lot of students, this is the first time that they're actually being part of a quarter system. That means that they may be going from a 16 to 18-week semester down to a 10-week quarter. That goes by very, very quickly. And again, I used to work with STEM students. I have a lot of STEM students that would say, I took 3 to 4 STEM classes at Solano. I'll do that when I get to Davis. And I say, don't do that. Don't do that. I've never seen anybody get more than about a 2.5 GPA when they took 3 to 4 STEM classes. And that's, again, you want to protect your GPA because, again, that's going to be a big factor going forward applying for programs. We also have 3 Friday seminars. Our program is structured that each Friday we're going to have an analytical and a quantitative GRE prep seminar, The GRE is a graduate record exam, which I say is kind of the equivalent of the SAT for graduate school. It's a test you must take, and so we have prep for that program. Lastly, we have the research seminar. That's one that I teach, and this is teaching research skills, because a lot of these students are going for research for the first time. They need to develop their ability to do research, to write, and to be able to present their research. So this is what we work on there in that research seminar. During the fall quarter, they also search and find a professor and lab to conduct research. Based on their interests, we have them go out and look for a lab. They start reaching out to those professors, and they do it themselves. The scholars will reach out because when they get to graduate school, that's actually something they're going to have to do themselves as well again. So it's kind of a dry run, almost a practice run to what they'll do in graduate school. And lastly, develop a question or a hypothesis for research. They're going to develop what their question, what research they're going to be doing. Because typically what happens is students will go and work with a graduate student or a postdoc, meaning somebody that already has their PhD, and they'll take on a subsection or a sub-project is what they'll develop and work on there. I'll skip through these next slides real quickly, but winter quarter, they'll continue to do well academically, continue doing research, continue those 3 workshops. It's going to keep continuing on during that process, keep moving forward. During the spring quarter, again, do well academically. Research should be underway and progressing at a good pace. Students are going to be working about 10 to 12 hours of research during the quarter is what they'll be doing. 3 workshops continue, and very, very important, what Alita mentioned earlier, the McNair Scholars will present at the Undergraduate Research Conference in late April. That means this is going to be their first opportunity to take what they've learned, what they've been studying in the lab. They'll go and typically present a poster on that specific topic. That's taking, again, that knowledge they've learned and being able to communicate it to somebody else that may not be doing that research. That's, again, something that's very important in being a researcher. Summer, we have an intensive summer program. The GRE prep continues, the 3 workshops and seminars continue, but there's an intensive research. This is really where the bulk of the research is going to happen during that summer. Now it goes from about 10 hours a week during the quarter to 30 hours a week during the summer is what they get involved here. Much more intensive because by then they've done some of the initial studies that are going to allow them to now put much more time during the summer. Because they are spending a good amount of time there, they will receive a $2,800 stipend during that summer. That's to support the students while they're there, support them being on campus during the summer. Also, we ask the students to use a little bit of that money to pay for taking their GRE exam. The McNair Scholars Program will provide a 50% waiver for the fees of the exam, but students are responsible for about $90 to $100 of the exam. So we do ask them to go ahead and use some of that money to take that exam. And again, we stress take it by the end of summer. Take that GRE by the end of summer because they can get it done before they start taking a lot of their classes in the next quarter. And right here, big piece, they present at the Berkeley McNair Symposium. This is a symposium where students from throughout the United States come to Berkeley and they present their research, typically in an oral form. So what the McNair Scholars are going to do, they're going to present a poster during the spring, and then in the summer they present an oral presentation. Again, working on those presentation skills is what they're going to do. Lastly, fall quarter of their senior year. This is really where all this last year that they've put this emphasis on developing themselves as researcher. Really, this is going to be the point where they start putting those together to prepare their applications, right? Again, we stress do well academically, but this is all going to culminate in them putting together their application in an application and research seminar that we have. They're going to apply to about 7 to 10 graduate schools. A big thing about the McNair Scholars Program is that there are about 250 schools in the US that will waive the fees, the graduate school application fees, if you're a McNair Scholar. And so that is something that is very big there. It waives the fees at UC Davis. Currently, the UC Davis graduate school fee is $105. So we do ask students to apply to 7 to 10 graduate schools, but again, most of those fees will be waived by being part of the program. Another thing that students do in the fall is that they're going to finish writing a research article. A research article is going to be what they will write. They'll take the research they've done during that past year, during the summer, that they presented on. Now they're going to actually put it together in the form of a research article. You may have had to read some of these in some of your classes, and this is going to be how they can communicate what they have learned, put it out there, put it into an article form, because you'll see that that's what researchers have to do. They have to publish, they have to put their research out there to communicate it to others. This is what I kind of say is the culmination of the scientific method, right? You see, you take an observation and it goes all the way to you reporting that what you found. This is that last piece that we have there. Let me just skip down to just note that all of these things that I've talked about that students will do, preparing, doing well academically, preparing for the GRE, doing research, presenting their research, writing a paper, is going to make them a competitive graduate school applicant. That's the goal of the program. Taking students that maybe may not have ever done any research, have them go through the program and have them be competitive for graduate school. That's the ultimate end goal. These are the requirements of the McNair Scholars Program. We require a minimum 3.0 GPA when you apply. And just got to give you a little insight on why it's 3.0. Graduate schools are typically going to require a minimum 3.0 GPA. And that's why we try to mirror what is going to be present there in graduate school. So we are going to ask students to have a minimum of 3.0 GPA. If you're transferring, and that's going to be your first quarter when you apply, or before you begin that fall quarter, we will look at the GPA that you're bringing from your community college. That's the GPA that we would look at. Completed 60 semesters or 90 quarter units, that's what a transfer student will have. You must be a U.S. Citizen or be a permanent resident. We are a federally funded program, so that is something that we are required to have. You must major in STEM, social science, or humanities, so we are a bit broad there. We do have a focus, I say, on STEM because it's about 75% of the scholars will be from the STEM disciplines. That's what we have there. There's two ways to qualify, two major ways to qualify for the program. You must be first generation student and low income. It's going to be one way to qualify, or be underrepresented in graduate studies, which means you must be from one of these three groups that we have down here. Sorry, there should be a fourth one, which would also be an Alaskan native that I left out there. And again, lastly, intend to pursue a PhD after graduation. That's the major goal there. Again, applications are due June 30th each year at UC Davis. I say UC Davis because different programs, McNair programs around the U.S., may have different structures. So if you're a transfer student, this is really what you want to do. Once you get that acceptance and you know that you're going to go to UC Davis, look up and apply, because that's really what is going to be required. Because if you wait to apply once you arrive to UC Davis in the fall, it may be too late, because we are going to require you to be there at least 2 years and start in the fall. So if you wait too late to apply, you may miss your opportunity to be part of the program. So if you are transferring to Davis, you know you want to do research, go ahead and apply as soon as you find out that you've been accepted. Okay. Where is it offered? I mentioned earlier, that there are different universities that offer the McNair Scholars Program. In the UC system, CSU, and again, over 150 universities throughout the U.S. I think the last count was up to 152, and they're looking to increase it to 164 this coming year. So again, there's a big number of these programs throughout the United States. Here's my information. Make sure to grab one of the flyers that we have back there. Lastly, I want to just leave you with this quote from Dr. McNair. Again, epitomizes, what he was about, where he says, whether or not you reach your goals in life depends entirely on how well you prepare for them and how badly you want them. Your eagles stretch your wings and fly to the sky. Right? That was his quote. Again, he was an astronaut. He was also a black belt in karate, as well as, I believe, a saxophonist. So you can see that he was a very accomplished man, and that's why we carry on the legacy of Dr. McNair with the McNair Scholars Program. Any questions? Getting a lot of information there, but again, feel free to grab some handouts back there, get some information. Okay.